What happens when a global symbol of honor and resilience becomes mired in allegations of financial misconduct? And what if the face behind that symbol is none other than Prince Harry, Duke of Sussex? A man who once drew international admiration for founding the Invictus Games, only to now face a legal firestorm threatening to undo everything he built. The shock reverberating through the royal corridors and veterans communities is not just about money. It's about broken trust, wounded pride, and the potential collapse of a legacy forged on the backs of real heroes. But before we continue, please subscribe, like, and turn on the notification bell for updates. In a twist few could have predicted, Don Lindsay, the very chairman of the Invictus Games Foundation, has officially filed a lawsuit against Prince Harry, alleging that a staggering $45 million has gone missing from the game's financial coffer. Not misallocated, not delayed, but gone. And with it, possibly the integrity of one of the most celebrated international sporting events for wounded, injured, and sick service personnel. The news hit like a thunderclap, shaking the confidence of donors, veterans, and supporters worldwide. How did we get here? How could an organization built on honor and sacrifice become the epicenter of scandal? What exactly is Prince Harry accused of? And more importantly, how will this seismic legal move reshape his public image, his relationships, and the future of the games? In the next few moments, we'll walk you through every twist of this unfolding drama. From the explosive claims hidden in legal documents, to the quiet fury inside Buckingham Palace, to the shattered voices of veterans who feel abandoned by a prince they once considered one of their own. You'll hear the details, the responses, the behind-the-scenes betrayals, and the bigger question looming over the world stage. Can the Invictus Games survive without the man who gave it life? This is not just about Harry. This is about trust, accountability, and the unraveling of a cause the world believed in. It began with a whisper in corporate corridors, an uneasy tension that spread among senior members of the Invictus Games Foundation, late-night calls between financial officers, silent glances across boardrooms, subtle shuffling of documents that no one wanted to admit were problematic. Then, like a dam cracking from beneath its polished exterior, the story burst into the public arena with the force of a tidal wave. On a crisp Monday morning, the British press dropped a bombshell. Don Lindsay, chairman of the Invictus Games, had filed an official lawsuit against Prince Harry, alleging the disappearance of $45 million from the organization's operational and charitable accounts. The gravity of the number alone was stunning. $45 million wasn't a line-item discrepancy. It was a financial gaping wound. According to the suit, filed in the High Court of Justice in London, and now a matter of public record, Lindsay accuses Harry of gross financial mismanagement, breach of fiduciary duty, and intentional suppression of internal audit findings that pointed to critical inconsistencies in how donor funds were being utilized. The court filing outlines that the missing money had been allocated for veteran rehabilitation programs, logistics for future Invictus Games in Germany and Canada, and a newly proposed mental health initiative for soldiers suffering from PTSD. Instead, the funds reportedly vanished without traceable documentation. It wasn't simply bad accounting. It was, as the suit plainly states, a calculated erosion of trust by the highest figure in the foundation. According to insiders close to the board, this wasn't a hasty move by Lindsay. The lawsuit was a last resort, triggered only after repeated internal requests for clarity were allegedly ignored or buried under bureaucracy and PR spin. The timing was equally strategic, filed just weeks before the next major Invictus fundraiser was set to be announced, putting Prince Harry in the spotlight whether he wanted it or not. If Lindsay's allegations hold even a shred of truth, then this could become one of the most high-profile nonprofit scandals in recent memory, and Prince Harry, the very man once hailed for championing wounded veterans, may now be cast as the architect of their betrayal. To understand the magnitude of the lawsuit and the weight it carries, you must first understand the man behind it, Don Lindsay. To most casual observers, his name might not ring bells the way Prince Harry's does, but within military and philanthropic circles, Lindsay is known as a tenacious advocate for transparency, discipline, and above all, the wounded warriors he spent decades supporting. His decision to take legal action against one of the most recognizable figures in the world wasn't just a boardroom move. It was personal. and it came from a place of deep conviction. Don Lindsay is a retired Royal Navy officer turned nonprofit strategist. He served multiple deployments, earned several distinctions for leadership under fire, and transitioned seamlessly into civilian life by becoming a fixer for troubled veterans charities. When the Invictus Games began in 2014, Lindsay was among the earliest supporters, admiring Harry's initiative and vision. But admiration didn't make him blind. Behind closed doors, he was reportedly a quiet enforcer. Known for asking tough financial questions and demanding accountability, even from royalty. Lindsay was appointed chairman in 2020 after the foundation faced its first minor controversy over expenditures during the Sydney Games. He quickly gained a reputation for stabilizing shaky operations and mending frayed relationships with donors and sponsors. But what makes Lindsay's lawsuit against Harry particularly explosive is the trust and access he was once granted. He wasn't some outsider with a grudge. He was in the room. He read the internal memos. He sat beside Harry during global planning summits. And now he's turned from ally to accuser. In a rare interview just before filing the suit, Lindsay reportedly told close associates, "There's a line between loyalty and silence. I've been loyal long enough." That quote, now widely circulated, has become a rallying cry among those in the veteran community who feel something sacred has been defiled. The lawsuit isn't just a legal maneuver. It's a declaration that even royal blood doesn't place one above the rule of law. And coming from a man like Don Lindsay, whose career has been defined by protecting the vulnerable and serving with honor, the implications are devastating. This isn't a tabloid scandal. It's a breach of principles by a prince who once claimed to live by them. That's the million-dollar, or rather, $45 million question now gripping the attention of auditors, journalists, and global supporters of the Invictus Games. The lawsuit filed by Don Lindsay doesn't just allege vague financial misconduct. It's specific. It points to multiple tranches of funding, each earmarked for critical programs, simply vanishing off the books. And the deeper financial analysts dig, the murkier the waters become. According to confidential financial documents submitted alongside the lawsuit, the first red flag emerged in late 2023 during preparations for the Dusseldorf Games. A $12 million line item, initially designated for veteran housing and post-event rehabilitation services, was marked as pending disbursement. Months later, that same figure was relabeled as logistical reserves, with no trace of its actual movement. Investigators claim that the funds never reached the intended contractors, and no records show payments to any verified third-party services. Then came the international sponsorship packages, multimillion-dollar deals signed with prominent tech and energy firms in Europe and North America. One internal audit reportedly found that more than $8 million in pledged donations had been marked as processed, but bank records reflected zero actual deposits into the foundation's accounts. Emails included in the court filing suggest that at least one major donor flagged this discrepancy, only to be met with deflection and delayed communication from senior Invictus executives. Even more troubling, the lawsuit claims that Harry personally authorized a series of direct payments, totaling over $5 million, to a consulting firm tied to a known associate of Meghan Markle's former PR team in Los Angeles. The services supposedly rendered remain vague: strategic brand management, image consultation, and narrative alignment for cross-continental partnerships. Critics argue these expenses veer far outside the mission of supporting injured veterans. If true, these transactions point not just to poor judgment, but a potentially deliberate misuse of funds for personal or reputational gain. For an organization built on the values of sacrifice, transparency, and service, the optics are disastrous. And while no official criminal charges have been filed, yet, the paper trail, or lack thereof, has already sparked inquiries by non-profit watchdogs in both the UK and US. The image of the Invictus Games as a beacon of hope is now entangled in a web of spreadsheets, wire transfers, and unanswered financial reports. In this chapter of the scandal, numbers don't lie. But someone, somewhere, certainly did. In the aftermath of the financial bombshell, attention quickly turned to the people surrounding Prince Harry, his trusted aides, senior advisors, and the core team who helped build and run the Invictus Games from the inside. If the prince was indeed unaware of how the funds disappeared, then who was managing the financial operations? And if he was aware, who helped him keep it under wraps? At the center of the controversy is Markle Renshaw, Harry's longtime chief of staff and a former British Army logistics officer. Renshaw had been appointed to oversee international operations for the Invictus Games Foundation shortly after Harry's split from the royal family. Internally, he was seen as the operations bulldog, a man who got things done, often without asking permission. Now, he's become a person of interest in the financial inquiry. According to internal communications leaked to reporters, Renshaw signed off on several questionable invoices tied to overseas travel, unexplained strategic planning retreats, and consulting retainers that totaled millions. Another name being scrutinized is Sophie Trellis, head of donor relations and a close friend of Meghan Markle. Trellis was reportedly involved in securing high-profile sponsors from the U.S., including several Hollywood-affiliated philanthropists. Her department handled the inflow of millions in donations, and yet, several of those very sponsors have now claimed in private interviews that they were never issued receipts or post-donation impact reports. I started getting nervous when they stopped responding to our due diligence requests. One American donor told The Guardian under anonymity. It felt like a wall had gone up. These aides weren't just employees, they were handpicked by Harry. Some came from royal circles, others from Meghan's entertainment network, and a few from the Sussex's Archewell Foundation. Many of them have now either quietly resigned or gone silent. One senior aide resigned just 2 weeks before the lawsuit was filed, citing unresolvable ethical disagreements. Insiders suggest that the inner circle created an echo chamber, one where dissent was discouraged and tough questions were smoothed over with PR-friendly explanations. With multiple former staffers now under legal review and facing potential subpoenas, the palace intrigue has only deepened. As public confidence erodes, the spotlight intensifies not just on Harry, but on the people he empowered. And in a scandal where loyalty once ran deep, it's now every insider for themselves. The Invictus Games weren't just a charity initiative. They were a lifeline for thousands of wounded, injured, and sick service personnel around the world. So when news broke that $45 million had allegedly disappeared from the foundation's coffer, the sense of betrayal wasn't limited to boardrooms or newspaper columns. It bled directly into the hearts of the veterans the games were designed to honor. The first shockwaves hit social media, where hundreds of former Invictus competitors, supporters, and military families voiced their disbelief. Many used the same word, heartbroken. James Holloway, a former British Army corporal who lost his leg in Afghanistan and competed in the 2018 Games, took to X, formerly Twitter, to write, "Prince Harry stood beside me when I took my first steps with a prosthetic. I believed in him. If this is true, it's like he betrayed every step I fought to take." His post was retweeted over 18,000 times in 24 hours. In the U.S., Navy veteran and former Invictus athlete Marcus O'Reilly told a San Diego radio station, "This wasn't just about medals. It was about purpose. We found something to live for again. If someone's been playing games with that kind of hope, they need to face consequences." What cut deepest for many was the emotional bond they felt with Harry. He wasn't just a celebrity or a royal figurehead. He was one of them. His military service, particularly his 2 tours in Afghanistan, lent him rare credibility in a space where authenticity is hard-earned. Many veterans saw him as a brother-in-arms who had used his privilege to amplify their struggles and celebrate their resilience. Now, some are questioning whether that image was more curated than authentic. Donor communities and sponsors have also begun to speak out. One prominent UK-based donor, who had given over £750,000 to Invictus since 2017, told The Telegraph anonymously, "I gave money not to a brand, but to a belief that wounded soldiers deserved the spotlight. If even a fraction of this is true, it feels like I was conned." In town halls, veterans' Facebook groups, and WhatsApp threads, the tone has shifted. What was once reverent silence toward the Sussexes is now skepticism, anger, and calls for reform. The message is clear. If the Invictus Games are to survive, the wounded heroes who made it what it is must be put first, no matter whose name is at the top of the marquee.